Awesome. So for everybody joining us, today we're going to talk about probably the most popular question I get is insurance right for you? Because if you have ever been on a call with me, there is a good chance that I may have told you that I don't think it's a good fit for you. And we'll talk about how I came to that conclusion, and why I do not think it is for everyone. So, the goal of today's call is to basically talk a little bit about the pros and the cons between cash based and insurance based, because there definitely are merits. I know that I am biased because I have been accepting insurance since 2008, but I want to make sure that if cash is a better fit for you, we'll talk about kind of why and who I think it is a better fit for. Like, I want to help you guys come to those conclusions as well. So, we're going to talk about both the benefits and the drawbacks of cash. We're going to talk about the benefits and the drawbacks, same attention to both, for both cash and insurance based. Then we're going to talk about what you guys should expect. Okay, like how does this shit work? I think for a lot of you guys, you do not understand how it works. And that is the part that is overwhelming for you. So I want to break down any uncertainty and any overwhelm you feel, because I don't think it's as bad as so many of you guys make it out. And then I want to talk about best practices, next steps, as well as something that I've never offered before for you guys on this webinar. So most dietitians want more clients, but if you're like me, you do not want to spend 40 hours a week hustling on Instagram. So that's why this question that we're going to solve tonight for you, okay, you will leave with an answer. I promise you this, is insurance a good fit for you? And the answer probably might surprise you. It may not be, depending upon your state, depending upon your specialty, your mindset, and who you are as an individual. So just by if you guys wouldn't mind, who is just cash based now? Okay, so if you're a cash based, and I promise, this is not, I'm not coming at you. I'm not offended by cash based dietitians at all. Awesome. Cool. Awesome. Yeah. So for a lot of us, we start cash based, for lots of different reasons. The main being insurance feels very overwhelming. And a lot of people will say, obviously, I don't want to deal with all the nonsense that comes with it. Right now, okay, let's flip it. Who is credentialed with insurance and actively billing? Okay. Let's see. And I'm sure okay, cool. Berry Street. Awesome. We can talk about them as well. Awesome. Insurance. Awesome. Perfect. Cool. Awesome. Cool. Okay. Yeah. Awesome. And once again, I want to be very clear. I am not anti-cash. And I love you equally as much. But I just kind of wanted to see, it would kind of give me a good sense. So if you're neither, okay, so if you are not cash-based or insurance-based, what is stopping you from starting the practice of your dreams? What are some things that come to mind, when you guys, what's holding you back? Why not just do it tomorrow? Cool. What is it scary? Does it feel overwhelming? Does it feel confusing? The business aspects, yeah. Going online, yes. Fee schedules. Yes, we'll talk about fee schedules too. Awesome. Denials. Perfect. Yeah. Not knowing where to start, I think, is the biggest one. And also being virtual. I think that we'll make sure that we nail all of these. Yes. Lack of knowledge, huge one. And I think actually, to be honest with you guys, I think what's holding most of you guys back is that uncertainty that surrounds all of this. And it's kind of like the Wizard of Oz. It's this mystery in terms of what's behind the curtain, right? So we're going to talk about that as well. So cool. And I'm considering stopping. Okay, cool. Yeah. I would single-handedly tell you one of the things that I see, is most dietitians who accept insurance who have not had a great experience often may not be doing it correctly. And we'll talk about that, what it looks like, why. It is very rare that I meet a dietitian who has been properly trained how to accept insurance, who is having a horrible experience. I think most of the experience that dietitians have or that you guys hear about is when it's more of a dietitian issue than it is an actual insurance issue. So you guys may have seen this slide if you have been on other calls with me. Um, Shout out to my husband, who I see is also on this call tonight. So this is 11 years ago. This is at my husband's 40th birthday. And looking at this picture, I felt all of these things on the screen. I felt confused in terms of running my practice. I was certainly overworked because I was working like 8 jobs. I was very overwhelmed because I did not feel like I was properly educated about insurance. I had a shit ton of animosity towards my field, right? And my $1 million degree that didn't teach me anything of any use, aside from what spoodle to use for a number 5 can of peas, right? And I also felt uncertain. At the time, I was making $33 an hour. I'm not sure why I was smiling, um, but I was clearly happy. So I started this, as many of you guys know, right out of my internship. I completed my internship in 2007. I started accepting insurance as soon as I was able to actually apply to sit for my exam. So I did my internship at Yale New Haven Hospital, and I started accepting insurance very quickly thereafter. I want to be very clear. I did not know my arm from my asshole at the time. So, like, if you're thinking that I was special or I was some type of snowflake, I clearly was not. So, I just want to be very clear. I started before this was cool. I started before I was ready. I started with less information than you guys have, and I did not die. So, that is always super important in terms of that. So can any of you guys relate? Like, are you in a job that's not super satisfying? Do you feel like this is the main thing for me? And I will be very clear. I knew I was capable of more. I just did not know what that more looked like. I felt overworked. I don't know how many of you guys have multiple jobs. I think at any given time in the very beginning of my career, I probably had, I don't know, 4 to 5 jobs. So I think that is, really, really important in terms of like understanding, like we all start somewhere. And like I said, different strokes for different folks. So I know for me personally, like, is accepting insurance the right move for your practice is going to come down to 3 key pieces. Okay. Number 1, your why, right? Rita, I see you on the call today, and on our call today, we were talking about anybody's why. So when I first started accepting insurance, right out of my internship, not knowing anything, I had niched down before it was really a thing. So I was servicing eating disorders in Division 1 athletes. I could not be any more niche, any more specific. But even though I did not know what I was doing, I knew that having an eating disorder was really expensive. And I knew that while I did not know how to do it, I knew that I could figure out how to bill for insurance and increase the accessibility to care, right? So like my why was I was working in a space that was already expensive. At the time, we did not have mental health parity laws where nutrition was protected. And I just wanted to help, right? I think a lot of dietitians, like, we are just like that. That's who we are. And so while I did not know what I was doing, I did have a very strong why. And why that is so important is because when shit gets hard in any type of business, not just an insurance-based practice, you will have to repeatedly remind yourself why you are doing what you're doing. And I'm going to be very clear, like cash-based dietitians experience the same shit that insurance-based dietitians experience. It's just in a different arena, and we're going to talk about that. And so I don't care if you're insurance-based or cash-based, you always have to remember why you chose to start this. And one of the things that I have to remind myself, even in the darkest seasons, is I chose to do this, right? And so it is important that your why somehow is related, deeply rooted to your passion for serving people, not just people who can afford your services. So if you're cash based, right? Once again, I'm not mad at you, but there is a good chance that your why is not 100% about increasing accessibility to care. Okay. It's not to say that you can't be cash based and care, but the reality for me at the time was my why was deep. Okay. I wanted to help the people that needed my services, not just the ones who could afford them. Okay. So accessibility was huge for me. And to this day, it has continued to be the number one reason why I exist. So it's super important because it will get hard. I can 100% guarantee you, like shit will get hard and you will need a strong why to fall back on it, right? So your peeps, right? So is insurance the right move for your practice? So there's certain areas of there's certain areas of nutrition that have much better coverage, right? So preventative care in any sense. So I want to be very clear. I work now completely pivoted 180 degrees, and we'll talk about why. I do weight management now. My practice specializes in PCOS. I've been a diabetes educator since 2009. So in the area that I practice nutrition and my team practices nutrition, weight management, preventative nutrition, diabetes, PCOS, women's health and wellness, obesity, hyperlipidemia, metabolic syndrome, anything that's in the preventative realm is very, very well covered. When it comes to eating disorders, intuitive eating, also very well covered. The only caveat between preventative nutrition and eating disorder care in the space of being a dietitian in private practice is eating disorders fall under medical, and medical usually will involve a cost share for the patient. Just to be very clear, eating disorders have to be covered if the plan covers any type of medical. So a lot of times you hear dietitians shit talk insurance for eating disorders. It couldn't be further from the truth. It just means if your patients come to see you, they may need to pay a deductible, a copay, because it is not considered a preventative service. So the peeps in which you serve, so if you are in the preventative space, if you are in the weight management space, if you love working with heart disease, if you love working with diabetic patients like we do, endocrine issues, then it is a very good move for your practice to accept insurance. Okay. So, like I said, if you do GI nutrition, also very well covered, it is just medical. And what I mean by medical, solid coverage, it just means your patients may pay their copay. Okay. And I want to use an example. It's just usually with women's health. But what I mean when I say preventative versus medical, if you are a female and you go for your annual OBGYN visit to see your OBGYN, that would be considered a preventative visit, right? You have a PAP every 3 years. You do not pay anything out of pocket. If you went back 3 weeks after you had that preventative visit and you had a UTI, right? That will be considered a medical visit. And what you pay the provider would be whatever your policy dictates for medical services. Okay. Why I have to define that right now is people think that just because these services have medical, that it's like it's a nutrition thing. No, this is how medicine right now works, right? We have preventative services and we have medical services. So, so in terms of your peeps, if you work in any space related to preventative nutrition, which we do, the bare minimum that our patients get on, like, I can't even think, aside from Aetna, I cannot think of a plan that caps us for weight management. Like, easily, meaning like I cannot think of a plan aside from Medicaid. Well, even Medicaid in Connecticut, actually. So, depending upon the types of peeps you serve, that could be a great fit. And then the third piece, not shockingly, is your mindset and your personality. In that picture that I just showed you of baby Amy, like, I am not the same person that I was now. Okay. And the reason being, like, from a mindset standpoint, like, I think being an insurance-based dietitian, while I have zero regrets, has really changed the way in which I operate in the world. There are very few things that will ever upset me. Like I said, I like to say I've been through the ringer as a business owner. And like from a mindset standpoint, you have to be of the mindset that you will roll up your sleeves as need be and get shit done. If you are not somebody who likes to do hard stuff, I don't think anybody likes to do hard stuff, but if you are not somebody who is willing to do hard stuff, if you are not somebody who is willing to fail before they succeed, then this is not a good fit for you, right? And so I think most of us do not know what we are capable of until we are tested. And I by no means will ever tell you that accepting insurance is rainbows, unicorns, and pink glitter. I really wish it was, but I will tell you, as somebody who works with thousands of dietitians, as somebody who has built a seven-figure business, the one thing that divides the successful dietitians between the unsuccessful is 100% their mindset. 100%. Because we are all cut from the same cloth. We all have a shitty business education. None of us know how to do this shit. So it's really going to be your mindset tied in with your why, whether or not this is a good move for you. And I will say, if you are fragile or if you are in a stage of your life for whatever reason that you are not as strong as you want to be, this may not be the best time to do this. This is one of my favorite quotes and something I have to repeatedly remind myself. Aside from when both of my parents were dying, for lack of a better word, I don't think I've ever been in a season that has been more challenging than the season that I'm in now. But what I need to keep reminding myself is that in order for me to grow, I have to be uncomfortable. And most people, I can tell you, are unwilling to be uncomfortable, right? So it's like most of the magic that we are avoiding, most of the work we avoid is the shit we need to be doing, right? And it's generally going to be the stuff that's most uncomfortable, right? There is a level of discomfort no matter what you choose to do. But for most people, when you do the shit that's hard, you will get the results, that are tied to that hardness. And on the other side of everything that is hard is freedom, is results, is growth, and it's hidden, often resisting kind of how we feel towards it. So I just want to be very clear, no matter what level of business you're in, if you're in the beginning, the middle, if you feel like you're more advanced, how you got to this first level will not get you to the next level. So there's this saying in the world of business, like there's a new devil at every level. And it's the dietitians that are willing to face that devil and do the hard shit. I can tell you 100% it's always the shit that you don't want to do, right? It's 100%. I can tell you, I can list give you guys a dozen things I do not want to do, but I know I have to do them in order to move my business forward. And for a lot of you guys, that's where you are right now. So now I want to take a candid look, and I promise we will get to any questions in the chat at the end of the presentation. But I want to talk cash versus insurance. And I want to go through all of the things that many of you guys are thinking, and I want to go through them one by one. So firstly, like, what are the benefits? I think most of them are self-evident. Some of them aren't. And then I want to go through the benefits to accepting cash as well. So we've talked about this one, and I will never stop talking about this one. By accepting insurance, you are able to help the people that need your services, not just the ones that can afford them. Okay. It increases your reach with who you can make an impact with. Okay. Hands down, full stop, period. Okay. It increases accessibility to care, and it allows dietitians and CNSs to be the nutrition experts, right? Because health coaches can't accept insurance. Karen, the keto-tastic coach, cannot accept insurance. So it allows us to kind of stand out, but most importantly, it allows us to increase accessibility to MNT. Okay. The second piece, and most people don't know this, but most patients, I would say almost, I'm going to tell you with full transparency, 98% of all insurance plans out there have some type of MNT on them, right? Unless it is a self-funded plan that wrote out nutrition services, which is still very rare. Like, it is very rare that plans do not have some type of coverage. Okay, so that's first things first. It used to be this concept nobody had nutrition coverage. But the reality now is that many of these plans, even billing with a generic code, have unlimited visits, right? So the third piece is patients want to use their benefits, right? So I think I pay $780 a month on my health insurance benefits. And I think out of pocket each year, I probably, because I'm self-employed, I probably spend about $12,000 towards medical, right? I want to use those benefits, right? And I'm sure you guys do too. I always say, if you're wondering what nutrition coverage looks like in general, call and verify your own benefits, right? I have an Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield plan. It's off the exchanges. I have unlimited visits to see a dietitian. So like I said, most patients want to use their benefits. And what you guys are telling me is, when you are cash-based, the first question you guys are getting is, do you accept insurance, right? Because so many dietitians now are that it's very different than it used to be. Number 4, doctors love referring insurance-based patients because it is a super easy handoff, right? We have little postcards. They have a QR code. We give them to all the doctors who refer to us. And they easily just click on that. They click on the link. It brings them to our website. They need to do nothing, right? I would say the majority of my practice personally is built on doctor referrals, right? So we do a lot of work with PCOS. So a lot of endocrinologists, PD endocrinologists, fertility centers, general PCPs for weight management. And shockingly, we also do a shit ton of GI. We work with some pretty sizable GI clinics. So doctors love referring to us because we can do shit they cannot do, and we can do the shit better. And number one, they don't have time. If you are a cash-based dietitian, it is not to say that they will not refer to you, but I can almost guarantee that the steady referrals, because what will happen is, as they hand off patients to you, less and less will book with a cash-based dietitian because most people don't have the means. It's not to say that cash-based dietitians are not amazing. It's just that most people can't afford that service. And so when the doctor asks them, did you go see so-and-so? They often will say, well, the person you referred to me, they didn't accept my insurance, so I couldn't afford it. So, and then lastly, pay is solid. In a world, I can tell you, as somebody who knows the insurance rates in every single state, although they are proprietary and they are not publicly available, there is a wide disparity. Okay. And when I say wide, I'm going to give you an example. Okay. A real example. And I'm going to use my state as an example. I'm going to compare it against. So I'm in Connecticut. We are contracted with all of the major payers. We do 90-minute initial assessments. And our lowest payer for that 90 minutes pays us $150. For that same payer in a different state, that same 90-minute assessment, right hand to God, pays $432. That is more than I made in one day working at Yale. So the rates are as variable as the day is long for the exact same service. Okay. And on that, I'm going to use that same payer in my head, because we can't discuss this publicly. For my 1 hour follow-ups in Connecticut, for my lowest payer, I get $75. That same payer in another state pays $232 on a follow-up visit. Okay. So and I always say $75 an hour is still pretty awesome if you're like a girl like me who was making $33 an hour. And so just to be very clear, I now charge $1,000 plus per hour, but I do not ever forget where I came from. I do not ever forget, getting a paycheck that was pretty much nothing, after taxes, retirement. I mean, $33 an hour does not go very far. So even if you were to pay me $75, which I think is the lowest I know, and I know pretty much all of the rates, I would love to 232, but I just don't happen to be in that state. I would say the average rate in the United States, if you take the highs with the lows, I think is about 108. I would say 108 to 119. Like I said, I work with dietitians in every single state. So I am pretty plugged into the rates. And so I am always fascinated when I see dietitians presenting misinformation when I know, because I credential dietitians and I know your fee schedules, how full of shit you actually are when you tell me that your rates are not really that good. So like I said, most rates might vary by state, but they also do vary to some extent, with how long somebody's been credentialed with them as well. So the other awesome piece about insurance is often they will do some marketing for you. You still have to market 1,000,000%, 1,000,000+%. But a lot of times after you start seeing patients and you start submitting claims, your name will go into the directory. It does not always go in automatically. And I would say it depends on the month. I'm going to say probably 10% of our patients, our new patients each month, maybe come through the insurance channels. I'm always fascinated by dietitians in the public Facebook pages when they start talking shit that the insurance companies, like they say, when I ask them what their marketing strategy says, they tell me they have no marketing strategy, and they're like pissed that the insurance directories are not bringing them patients. Like that to me is like the laziest thing I've ever heard in my life. And so just because you're insurance-based does not mean you don't need to market. It just means you market differently. Okay. But I do not have a social media account for my private practice, nor have I ever. So that is not the way that we source our patients. If you do love social media, that's a great way to get patients, but it just requires so much content and nurturing. Number 8, shockingly, you can incorporate really high ticket packages, programs, a la carte services. Before I knew what I was doing, I was selling high tickets programs and packages. We were doing PCOS packages. My husband and I were integrating metabolism testing, customized meal planners. So you can still do all of the things that you do in a cash-based practice. You just have to do them responsibly and intentionally when you're billing insurance as well. So you can only bill insurance for like one-on-one MNT and then group MNT, but you can certainly still continue to sell and deliver killer programs and packages. That is something that I teach dietitians how to do. And I have a ton of rock star dietitians in my programs, like crushing it. Obviously, you can stand out. And then lastly, often depending upon the plan, what you are billing for, there is no cost share. I really want to like drive home number 10. I cannot tell you on a day-to-day basis how many improper claims I see dietitians submit to insurance. And like, I get it. I'm not mad at you. But the reality is that if your patients have a cost share, there is a good chance you build it incorrectly. Okay. So if your goal is to hit the preventative side, and the patient's deductible came, that is a shoe in or a sure sign that you probably by accident did not bill it correctly. So if you bill correctly under the patient's preventative side, then there should not be a cost share. If there is a cost share, that is a good way of knowing you did not bill it correctly. So, okay, so that was insurance, right? Let's talk about the benefits of a cash-based model, right? Because we want to keep it real. And like I said, there are lots of benefits of a cash-based model, right? Upfront payments, right? So like you will generally charge your patients before they even walk in the door, right? With insurance, I would say it takes our quickest payer, we usually get paid within 48 hours. I would say Aetna is probably our fastest payer. Our highest volume is probably Blue Cross Blue Shield. That probably takes maybe 10 days. Medicare is like 30 days. So if you're somebody that like loves just like counting your money up front, like a cash-based practice may be a better fit because you're collecting the money up front. The cool thing about being cash-based, like you can charge $1 million an hour, you can charge whatever your rate is, or whatever you want your rate to be. What I will tell you in my experience, and I just had this conversation with a dietitian last week, unless you are fucking awesome, awesome at what you do, and you are super niche, if you are commanding anything above $200, I can almost guarantee you will have a really hard time sustaining your practice. I work with mostly insurance-based dietitians, but I consult with cash-based dietitians, and I see a lot of dietitians inexperienced charging banana rates, right? So you can charge banana rates, but if you are not meeting your income goals, then that becomes problematic, right? So it's like like I say with anything, you have to know your shit, right? So yes, you can define your price, which is amazing. And if you are in a like high demographic area like New York City, San Francisco, right? Like that's going to play into what the market is going to bear. So yeah, that's really cool. You can define your price, right? Administration is less, right? Like you don't need a clearinghouse. You don't need to submit hot claims, so you still need to charge people. You need to have, like something like Square or something like Stripe to collect the payments. But obviously like totally less, administration, right? For most dietitians, there's no learning curve, right? Aside from learning how to establish your business, I will also say that as somebody who does a lot of consulting with you guys, most of your businesses are set up like on pretty shaky ground, whether you be cash-based or insurance-based. So there is no learning curve for collecting money from people aside from setting up, the credit card processor. But there is a learning curve for setting up a business that I think is the same whether or not you're cash-based or insurance-based. Number 5, super important. If you are a dietitian or a CNS who has a super defined niche, right? You do like mast cell activation, theory or whatever it is. You work with patients in a highly specialized autoimmune area. I'm gonna use some other examples when we talk about, kind of broader. You really need to be niche down if you are going to be cash. If you want to be insurance-based, you can be as wide as the day is long. You can learn what you like to do and not do. But I would say single-handedly, like if you do not serve a specific gender, like you have to be super specific because people need to choose you versus an insurance-based dietitian. So your skill set has to be very high and your marketing message has to be very clear. Which if you're really good at marketing, like you can nail this, right? So but I would say if you are in the weight management space, trying to exist as a cash-based practice, unless you have 15 plus years of experience, like meaning like you just command so much, so much clout, then it probably will be challenging because that same person can go to a dietitian who, who accepts insurance. And if they're overweight, they have unlimited visits. So if you have a clearly defined population, and I'm not even just saying like PCOS. I don't think PCOS is clearly defined. Like that's not even how niche I'm going down. Like I would say we do weight loss. We do weight loss in women with PCOS, right? I would say if you do PCOS and you wanted to define it further and go cash based, like maybe you just do intuitive eating for patients with PCOS, right? So you have to like go pretty deep if you want to exist as cash. And if you're like me when I first started my career, like eating disorders in Division 1 athletes, like my business was gangbusters. Like I had more patients than I knew what to do with, but I hated what I was doing. Okay. So I had a super defined population. Um, Probably more defined than most dietitians. And I had gone to school for what felt like 30 years to do the things that I was doing. But once I started practicing as a clinical dietitian and not working in research, like I ran as quick as I possibly could from eating disorders. So, like, I went from working, and it's what's really interesting is that when I started with eating disorders, like that was in 2007, 2008, people, and I haven't seen an eating disorder patient probably since, gosh, 2010, maybe even like earlier than that. People still think that I'm like an eating disorder dietitian. We see everything aside from eating disorders in my practice, right? So sometimes what you guys start off doing is not what you end up doing. And that's why I think like you just like I said, if you already have a super like if your ditch is dug deep and you know exactly who you want to serve and that's all you want to serve, then cash might be an awesome fit for you, right? So now let's talk about the negative. These are probably ones you guys already know, but what are some of the main drawbacks to accepting insurance, right? This is a big one. Policies are not universal, right? So we have main insurance companies, right? We have Blue Cross Blue Shield, Cigna, Aetna, United Healthcare, and Medicare. Medicare, super universal, just covers diabetes and CKD, literally hands down my favorite insurance to bill. But policies are not universal, and so it does require a learning curve. You can literally show me a patient's insurance card, like literally just send me an insurance card and I can tell you what their plan covers. So there are a lot of trends and it's pretty easy to decipher, but in the beginning, it feels like alphabet soup. So yes, it is true. Not all policies are universal, but all policies have universal preventative coverage. Okay, so the preventative coverage for all like for each insurance individually, always the same. So if you said to me, Amy, I'm seeing a UHC patient, they have a fully funded group plan, the patient is overweight, what do you think the coverage is going to look like? Unlimited visits all day long, right? So once you know the codes and the patients you're seeing, same thing, Aetna, right? All Aetna patients, if they're overweight or obese, 26 visits. If they're not, everybody else gets 10. Okay. So it's like, even though these things may seem so crazy to you, like there are only a handful of principles for each policy. The pay is at the contracted rate, right? So if you are a dietitian in New York City and you're charging $300 an hour, you're not getting that in an insurance-based practice. I would say the average rate in the United States is about 108 right now, probably up to 119. Once again, there's states that pay well above 200, and then there's states like mine that I would say kind of middle of the road. So once again, I was making $33 an hour. So my original rates with Blue Cross Blue Shield in 2007 were 75 for an initial and like 48 for a follow-up. So that was like 2007, 2008. They did not go up until 2015, but what I can tell you was I felt like a millionaire even at $75 an hour because it was such a big difference from the $33 an hour. So the contracted pay is what you are subjected to, and that is what you are. You can, And you can charge insurance whatever you want. Like I can bill $500 a visit. They are only going to pay my contracted rate. Obviously, this is a big one for all of us. Please don't think that I had some different education than you did, because I'm old as shit. A lot of you guys are younger. I may have even came to your dietetic internship and talked about, reimbursement because that's something that I do. Every year I travel all over the country speaking at universities on this topic, but I was not taught this in school. And so I would not be lying if I didn't tell you that I had a chip on my shoulder, that I was not taught any skill set that I needed to function in the real world, especially in the business world. And so this elicits a whole kind of other set of animosity. But, one of my favorite quotes is, and I use it probably every day, and maybe I even talk to myself and say it, certain things in life are not my fault, but they are my problem, right? It was not my fault that I did not get a business education. It was not my fault that nobody told me anything aside from run from from insurance, but it became my problem, right? And so if I wanted to be successful, I needed to teach myself, right? So I get it. Please don't think that I just have like a lot of reps under the bar. I don't have any more education than you do. Not all networks are open. So I see a lot of you guys in Orlando. I see a lot of you guys down in Florida. I see a lot of you guys in Michigan, right? Like those are two really bad states for insurance, because the Blue Cross Blue Shield products in those states are not open to dietitians. So in my coaching programs, I do not take dietitians in Michigan, and I do not take really dietitians in Florida, unless is not your home base, right? So, and it's not just those states. Even in a state, say like California, all of the networks are open aside from Cigna. Colorado, I see a lot of you guys in Colorado. Most of the networks are open aside from UHC. Certain states, say you're in Iowa, all of the markets are open aside from Blue Cross Blue Shield. So, so I think that's a frustrating piece because a lot of you guys like, you're like ready to accept insurance. And then I'm like, hey, PS, have you read the blog on Michigan? Hey, PS, have you read the blog on Florida on my website? Right. So that is super frustrating. And I will be very clear, in Connecticut, when I first started, Aetna and UHC were closed for me for about a decade. And I appealed super aggressively. I wrote certified letters that I sent every single month. And eventually I got in. And I would say, I won't say which one of those payers, but one of those payers pays me $192 an hour. So it was that's something I teach in my coaching program. I teach you how to get into networks where they are closed because of the dietitians. I cannot help you get into Florida Blue. I cannot help you get into Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan until your licensure goes into effect. I cannot help you get into Cigna in California. But most other networks, I can teach you how to appeal. But I am generally very transparent with what I can and cannot help you with. This part is bananas. Most people who know me will tell you that one of my strong suits is in communication. I will single-handedly tell you that the communication with insurance companies is next level insane. I'm going to give you an example just of yesterday. So in addition to my coaching services, right, we do credentialing for dietitians. It was not something I wanted to do, it was not on my bingo board. But what I was realizing is that some dietitians just couldn't do it on their own. So, and other people were doing it, they were doing it shitty. So I knew that I knew this better than anybody. I've been doing this longer than anybody. So a dietitian reached out to me that were doing her credentialing in Washington State. She was freaking out. And she reached out to me and she said, oh my gosh, like this patient wants all their money back. They told me that I'm already credentialed, da 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 da. And so sure as shit, like her contract is not ready to go until the end of September. So like she called them back and then they changed their tune. So there's so much miscommunication on a fundamental level. So you always need like a mentor or somebody to help you decipher all of the bad shit that's out there because it is poor. Obviously, there's better coverage for certain types of people. We've already kind of beat those ad nauseum. But if you work in weight management, preventative services, women's health, gangbusters, taking candy from a baby in terms of billing. If you work in mast cell activation theory or one of those really strange, nuanced areas, you probably will have a challenging time with coverage, right? Eating disorders, very well covered. GI stuff, well covered, right? So, but if you work in a very finite niche, I would say probably more challenging. What are the drawbacks to cash, right? So the obvious one being decreased accessibility to care, right? Like it is almost impossible to help the people who need your services if you are cash-based, right? It's not to say that they would not be able to sign up for a handful of months, maybe with your program, but it makes your ability to make an impact very challenging because it is dependent upon, their indisposable income. This is a big one. And I have to say, like, this slide deck is completely new. I just redid it all last week. There's so, like, I have never seen this to be the case aside from the last couple years. So many dietitians are now accepting insurance where it was not the case before, right? When I first started, I want to say for the first 5 to 8 years, like, I don't think I knew another dietitian accepting insurance. But now you have so many dietitians accepting insurance that you really have to make sure if you're cash based that you really kind of stand out from the crowd, right? And so this was last month. These were some of my coaching clients from my membership, so like my higher tier masterminds. We all got together in New York City, and a lot of these dietitians, like Dan Feldman, I've been working with him think for like 6 years. So like these are dietitians that are crushing it in insurance-based practices, as are so many other dietitians. So this is just a snippet of the dietitians who are participating with insurance. And in this picture, we have dietitians from many different states. So like I said, one of the more challenging pieces is like if your goal is to like kind of hook up with doctors, it tends to be more of a challenging referral source because they have to sell you, right? So in most, like I have a friend who is like a foot and ankle reconstructive surgeon, right? He does all of like the amputations, like bilateral amputations with diabetes. On a typical day in his practice, he sees like 45 patients, right? So even though all of his patients are my ideal client, like, I cannot think of a time in my life when he's ever referred a patient. Like, I don't think that he thinks I'm a shitty dietitian. It's just like it does not cross his mind, right? He's just trying to get through the day. So I would say as a whole, like, unless you are in like a concierge practice, you're part of like a cash-based like wellness center, you're in a super affluent area. But I would even like beg to differ. We have a lot of physicians that we see in our practice, like physicians as patients. And I would say like all of them want to use insurance. So sometimes it's not about how much money you have. It's like people just want to use your insurance. So so if you're really good at social media and like you're not going to go after local MDs, like that should not be a problem from a cash base. So and so if you are cash based, you have to love marketing. And so marketing will be your full-time job because you're gonna have to be active on social media or really plugged in like with like I said, like a concierge practice, any type of practice that's cash based, it probably will. So like this is where I always say you have to choose your hard, right? Choosing your hard in an insurance-based practice means running the hills and coasting later, right? You put in the work for the first 6 to 8 months, you figure out this shit, and then you will grow the shit out of your practice for the foreseeable future, right? Right? Think about it. I started my practice in 2007. We're still here in almost 2026, right? The goal is that your practice doesn't make six figures next year. You want it to continue to make six figures decade after decade after decade. And that's not to say that you can't do it in a cash-based practice. It just requires a lot of marketing effort, right? Because it means that you have to be very visible. It means your marketing message has to be super drilled down. And if you think about it, if you're running like a 3-month program, On month 2, you have to start re-enrolling those patients into your next program. So a lot of times, like you have very short periods where you're not selling. In an insurance-based practice, you're very rarely selling. There are other implications, but the marketing piece, I would say, is the least one you need to worry about. You totally have to market 1,000,000%, no matter what direction you go. One is going to be more labor intensive in terms of the learning curve, in terms of learning, insurance. Then the other piece is going to be like labor intensive in terms of social media. Once again, like I only really follow dietitians. I follow dietitians on social media, like fashion stuff, and then like travel. Like those are the things that I'm super passionate about. And I love watching you guys on social media. Like I think it's so much fun, like, to watch you guys show up, do your thing, deliver killer values. So like I think there's a lot of value in what you guys are doing. And I could not be more excited to watch you. But I also know as somebody who produces over 100 pieces of content every single week for free for you guys, that is literally a full-time job. So I understand firsthand as a creator, like what that looks like. And like right now, I love it. But I can see like down the road how it may not be super fun. So if you love marketing, advertising, like showing up, talking about yourself, which some dietitians are awesome at, then like cash base, like that's pretty awesome for you. And then like the last piece, and I don't think that this is something we often think about, is sustainability, right? So I am a huge fan of long term. I am a huge fan of understanding that I may not get what I want tomorrow, but if I put in the work and I put the systems in place, then I can have sustainable income in the long run, right? Sustainability is somewhat tough in a cash-based practice because you're relying on like short hits of money, right? And so unless you're running a sustainable membership, and you're able to leverage people into that, like even with something like a membership model, say for PCOS, you have to have a shit ton of people in it and you have to be delivering killer value, right? So you have to have stuff that keeps people in any type of program, right? So it doesn't matter if it's a 3 month, 6 month, 12-month program. It doesn't matter if it's a membership because no matter what it is, if it sucks, people will not continue paying because they do not see the value in it, right? So the same is true for dietitians. I see the same, I want to be very clear. I see the same shit happen in insurance-based practices where dietitians are trying to integrate programs and packages. If the program, package, service, if this thing that they're trying to sell is shitty, like they're still not selling it either, right? And the sustainability like is not there as well. So like it's not a cash base versus insurance base when it comes to services. It's just many of your patients, if you're working in the preventative space, will have many visits in which they can spend over the course of the year, right? And so you will, if you work in eating disorders and you're working with insurance, like you can see that patient probably weekly. Like some dietitians are seeing eating disorder patients but like twice a week, right? So like the coverage is there. And so you don't have to worry every single time, about them reaching into their pockets. And so you might be asking, like, how does insurance work, right? So I would say on average, because I get this question a ton, like how long does it take to execute? So the credentialing and contracting process probably takes about 3 months. I would say anywhere from 3 to 5 months, depending upon your state and the product. Some dietitians like put in the wrong applications out of the gates. And often the insurance companies won't tell you that right away if you like select the wrong one. And so that's where you hear some of the horror stories. And I'm going to be very clear. We do credentialing for dietitians as well. And like we encounter just as many horror stories. We just know how to navigate them. So that process takes about 3 to 5 months. Once you're up and running, you're able to market your services, right? Then you just need to understand like what the, verification of benefits. So like what the patient's plan covers. In my practice, we don't verify patients' benefits. We kind of put that on them. But that's only because I go in every Friday and I look at their cards and their plans and what we're seeing them for, and I can kind of determine like what the next steps are. So I would say kind of like probably 3 to 5 months, kind of setting up your business. I would say like your practice is probably ready to go within 6 months. I would say in my experience from working with thousands of dietitians, I would say most dietitians probably leave like their part-time gig and go full-time. I would say probably like around 8 to 12 months. I would say that like they, those the like the probably months like 6, 7, and 8 are like the most fun for me to watch you guys in because like if you've done the shit you've needed to do, like insurance is like such like a gateway drug, right? So it's like it takes off pretty quickly. If you so it's like understanding. And then I would say, like I said, I think I talked about this before. Um, Medicare takes the longest. It's about 30 days. I would say Aetna for us, we're getting paid in about 48 hours. Blue Cross Blue Shield about 10 to 12. UHC probably about 21 days. Yeah. So it's like we're always getting, if, when I see dietitians not getting paid, I can almost 100% of the time, and I say this from a place of love, and I say this as baby Amy, like sometimes I look at their claims and I'm like, what? Like, WTF, like you have like 3 modifiers on there. Like you reversed like where things are supposed to be. And they're like, well, I got paid on that before. And I was like, I'm not sure how. So like a lot of times when people aren't getting paid on time, quickly, or at all, like I can almost guarantee you, like if you showed me that claim, like I could take you start to finish in terms of like what to do and how to fix it. So, and then like lastly, like what are like best practices? So like what are best practices if you're a dietitian who's thinking insurance based, like what shit should you be doing? What shit should you not be doing? So I would say one of the most important things is like getting really good systems in place. Because I worked like 8 jobs for the first decade of my life, I didn't have the opportunity to not have efficient systems. And so, like, everything in my practice is automated, it's delegated, and it flows like very smoothly, right? So, you just want to make sure that, like, that kind of saying, like, systems scale, right? Like, you really want to make sure that as you are educating yourself, that, like, you're putting in really good systems. My second best piece of advice that I can give you is temper your expectations, right? Like when you are building epic shit, it usually takes 2 to 3 times more than you think that it should, right? And so a lot of times we have to go a couple steps forward, to go a couple steps back. And I'll just give you an example, right? Like we switched EMRs, right? Like we switched EMRs in May, thinking that it would be a better cost savings. Fast forward 3 months, 4 months later, everybody on my team fucking hates the EMR. I fucking hate the EMR. So now we switch back, right? And so, so it's like this, so it's like no matter how long you've been doing this, like tempering your expectations, and like committing to the process are probably the most important. Um, you know, the third piece of advice that I have for you guys in terms of what you should be doing, not be doing, I would say do not worry about niching down. Okay. What a lot of you guys need to figure out is like what lights you the fuck up, right? Like that's what you need to determine. And what I can tell you is like you're not going to know what you want to do until you learn what you don't want to do. Okay, so super important. So, like, if you're working with a business coach and they're like, niche, 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 like, it's like, don't listen to them. Like, a lot of you guys don't have enough experience. Like, I can tell you, like on 2 hands, all of the shit in terms of clinical that I do not want to do. Don't want to do peds. I don't want to do PCOS. I don't want to do FODMAPs and like food allergies and foods. Like, but I can tell you what I love: weight management, PCOS, like diabetes education. So like, do not feel that just because everybody and their mother is telling you you need to niche the fuck down, like, don't listen to them. Like, figure out what you love, figure out what you don't like, reiterate, refine, right? And like, go again, right? Like, I started in eating disorders, 3 or 4 years of research in eating disorders. 3 months of doing eating disorders, like at a clinical high level, hated it, right? Then I switched to athletes because my background is in sports performance. Didn't love that, right? Then I switched to PCOS. So, like, what you guys start doing in your practice, cash based or insurance based, probably will not be the thing that you end up doing, right? And so, like, tempering your expectations is really, really important, and then the last piece is, and I say this so much from a place of love, is that a little bit of knowledge is dangerous, right? Like sometimes I talk to dietitians and I'm not sure if they really realize like how long I've been doing this, but a lot of times it's like it's that little bit of knowledge that gets people in trouble, right? So, it's like if somebody has what you want, all right, like if somebody has already done the shit that you want to do and like they have the business you want to accomplish, don't invent the wheel, right? Like, like it's the wheels are already invented, right? There's plenty of people teaching people how to do insurance-based practices. There is no reason why you need to struggle. Okay. So those are some of my best practices. Like I said, I could tell you, I could write a whole book on best practices as somebody who has made every possible mistake in terms of the insurance book. But those are the ones I want you to focus on. And I want you to think about that because a lot of times like in the space is noisy in private practice. Everybody's trying to tell you to do one thing or the other. But the reality is like you have to do what's best for you, right? So now I want to talk about imagine if you had the systems, right? So one of the things I used to say in the very beginning of my career is I would have given my left arm, probably not my right arm, for somebody to teach me how to do all of these things, right? Imagine having the systems, knowing exactly what to do to get paid, how to bill, having a bestie there to say, hey, Aim, I'm billing UHC. How do I do this? What do you think I should do? What would Amy P do there, right? Like what I want for all of you guys is a sustainable practice, right? I do not want you to be a one-hit wonder. I don't care if you do cash base. I want you to be sustainable. Like I want you to take this next step and I want you to do this long term, right? I don't want this to be a side hustle. I want you to make it full time for you if that's what you want, right? So that's why for me, like I have always, if you've ever, like, if you know me, I always use the word empire, right? Like, I don't really say private practice. Like, you're building a fucking empire, and an empire takes time, right? So, like, somebody gave me this analogy, and I thought it was brilliant. And they said to me, you know what, Amy, when you're talking to new dietitians, I think this is a really good analogy that you should use. And I was like, this is genius. She said, a lot of dietitians out there are like playing house, right? They're playing house with private practice, right? Like they're like jerry rigging stuff, like their systems suck, like they're overworked. And I was like, that's like pretty true because I often think about what are the things that like the dietitians who are crushing it, like what do they have that other dietitians don't have? And it's really like sustainable systems in the ability to do hard shit for long periods of time, knowing that there's going to be a reward on the end of the other side. So, as you guys know, like I run a coaching program. It is literally the best thing I have ever done in my life, hands down. It is a 6-month coaching program where I teach you every single aspect of reimbursement. I don't even just, not only do I teach you how to credential, I teach you how to select an EMR, why to choose a certain EMR, how to correct denials. I teach you how to manage your money, how to set up your business, how to save for retirement. So I really believe that it's impossible for me to teach you how to be insurance based if I do not teach you how to set up your businesses. And so most dietitians who graduate out of my coaching program feel very confident in their skills. And that's what a lot of you guys don't have is that confidence. So these are just like literally, these are from the last couple weeks. We do Wednesday wins in my coaching program. We have like 110 dietitians in it right now. And then we have 200 dietitians in my membership. And it's always really fun because I think Wednesday wins, are not just about financials. It's about like what dietitians are able to achieve. And a lot of these dietitians are like brand new to private practice, I would say within the last like 8 months. So it's really fun to watch just like diet. Like this is like I would be lying if I told you I didn't cry on Wednesday wins because I know how hard you guys work. And I know what you guys sacrifice. Like these guys are like moms, like English is not the first language for some of these dietitians. Like some of these dietitians have moved across the country. They have like 3 kids, like they're in a master's program. So it's like, it's just so much fun to watch dietitians crush it. And so these are just, like I said, these are recent. Like these are not, yeah, I just have so many, like I could tell you so many stories about all of these dietitians on here. Like Caitlin Sagoon, which is a dietitian I've been working with. Like I remember when she moved from Utah to North Carolina and like moved her whole family and then just started her whole insurance-based practice in Charlotte. Like she has just been a true testament to watch people crush it. So anyway, like these are very recent. So it's just fun to watch other dietitians. And these are all dietitians who chose to, go all in on insurance because they really realize like the benefit of it. This is something I have never, ever, ever done, and I probably will never, ever do it again. But I knew I had so many people registered. I knew I really wanted to increase accessibility to my program. So I'm doing 2 things that I don't always do. For you guys, for the 6-month coaching program that includes 6 months of coaching in a group setting, all the modules on how to get set up, live calls every single week with me, and a closed Facebook page. I am giving you 20% off, which I have never done in my entire life, right hand to God, for a webinar special for you guys if you purchase the program by Sunday at 11:59 p.m. The other option that I never do, and I probably won't do it again, is a 12-month plan. So we only usually do paid in full, which right now is $46.90. And then we also do a 6-month payment plan. We have not offered a 12-month payment plan for obvious reasons. But what I've been really seeing is that so many of you guys want to do this coaching program and you just need a lower payment. So once again, these 2 options will disappear after Sunday. I'll send you guys a link. But this is like the program will always be there. It just will not have these options in terms of participating. And like I said, most dietitians, I'm sure you've seen it. They've said that like most dietitians say this is the best thing they've ever done. So before we get to questions, just to recap, right? This program will save you time. It will save you money. Most dietitians in insurance-based practices are making 6 figures. If they do what I tell them to do, I would say easily within 12 months, right? Most dietitians get their investment back probably within 4 months of seeing patients, probably sooner. You get confidence, you get me, right? I do not think you will ever find a program that is as good as this, but you will never find a dietitian, because I'm old as shit, who's been doing private practice for as long as I've been doing. And as you guys know, I offer a money back guarantee. If within the first 30 days of doing the coaching program, it is not what I told you it would be, I will give you your money back, right? I've never had a dietitian do that, but I want it to be a no risk, approach. So like I said, in conclusion, before we jump to questions, which I love to do, I really want you guys to think long and hard about what direction you go. And I know I didn't say this, but I do want to say this, is that I do not want you to choose insurance because you feel like you failed at a cash-based practice. I can almost guarantee that if your why is not rooted in increasing accessibility to care, it's not to say that insurance-based dietitians don't make money. I have just always seen, if you default to this and you have animosity towards insurance to begin with, it makes it very, very challenging when shit gets hard, and shit will get hard. Shit will get hard in your cash-based practices as well. So I just want to really drive home that point that, like, I don't want you to choose insurance because you feel like that's your only choice. There are plenty of amazing, outstanding, incredible cash-based dietitians absolutely crushing it. Hands down, right? Like they're really good at what they do. So I just want to make sure that that's like my final thoughts are like, think about what lights you up, right? Like, do you fall in one of the camps that we talked about in terms of like things that really bring you joy, patients you like to work with? Like, are you in a state like Michigan or Florida that's super shitty for insurance, right? Like, you may not have any alternatives, right? But if you're working for a company, like a telehealth company, and they're taking a pretty significant cut of what you're making, right? Like it may be some time, it may be a good time to kind of consider what your next steps are, right? So, like I said, I love you whether you are cash based, insurance based. I want dietitians to make money doing what they love, right? But I do not want people to choose insurance because everybody else is doing it. I want them to choose it because it feels right for them, because I can tell you firsthand, like that's what's going to be most important. So, with that being said, I'd love to jump into your questions. So I'm just going to minimize this and then we'll get to it. If I have answered your question like in talking about it, I'll probably like skip over it. But if I did not answer it, I'd love to kind of get into it as well. And then as we're going through, if other questions come up, like I'd like to address those as well. So cool.